How do you see AI shaping the role of data scientists or data functions in general?
I have a lot of opinions, and I'm going to share a few. First and foremost, ad hoc reactive type of analytic work will gradually be replaced. One small example is, I think back in 2023, at Coinbase, me and a few of our data engineers, we run into this kind of a general issue. The business demand on data analytic insights continue to grow. The market was not that great. I got no headcount to hire. And that happened to be the time the GPT 3.5 released. And now we have this idea to say, hey, why don't we give it a try? So we have our very strong junior data engineer who were able to actually build a prototype based on Slack with what I consider the data copilot for data scientists. They can answer basic questions based on our metric semantics, metrics, creating charts. It serve as a knowledge base that essentially you can ask, how do we define certain metrics? And it'll pop up the definition for you. It also serves as a workflow optimization. You can tell the Slack bot to say, I want to backfill my table to this date. It will actually kick off an Airflow job. To become very powerful in that smaller domain. At some point, if we can scale that, it'll become even more powerful. More of our work will be replaced.
Justin, you did replace a data scientist's job now with your bot. So
it's not unavoidable. It's not me replacing the job. It's the trend itself. I do want to make a separate point.
In today's episode, we're joined by Justin Chen, a trailblazer in data science leadership with experience as the head of data science at Mercury Insurance, Coinbase, a stint at LinkedIn, and even his own startup. Justin shows why sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. He talks about how to build data science organizations. He shatters the unicorn myth, arguing that the perfect data scientist might just be you. And he reveals how AI is already revolutionizing the way we work. This is a masterclass in innovation and leadership you won't want to miss. If you enjoy this content, subscribe to Data Neighbor in your favorite podcast app and YouTube. Let's dive into our conversation with Justin Chen. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Data Neighbor podcast with Shravya and Sean. Today we have Justin Chen joining us to talk about building teams, management, and his philosophies on data science orgs. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you.
Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Shreya. Nice to meet you all.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, so it's going to be a really interesting episode. And Justin, you are currently a senior director of growth data science. You were previously a senior director and head of data science and engineering at Coinbase. You had your own startup before, and then you worked at LinkedIn. So very high caliber companies where you've built massive teams and functions from scratch. So would love to focus this episode and this conversation around your principles of building these orgs and what you value the most, and what our audience how they can prepare themselves if they want to work in one of your orgs. Sounds good?
Great. Yeah, happy to share any insights and anything that be helpful for the audience.
Cool. Okay, so to start off, I think one of your principles related to data science foundations and engineering excellence for building up an organization is this idea of go slow to go fast. What does that mean, and why do you have that as a principle?
Right. So this is actually a very good question, and then also coupled with many painful lessons we had. So as data science, analytics, sometimes machine learning engineers, when there's a business requirement coming in where you have an idea you want to actually pull out, the tendency is to write something really quick, right? So write a quick SQL queries and throw it together for a dashboard and just ship it. It works well, especially early days of a company, because you want that fast iteration. Everyone is under time pressure. In many ways, our role, this data science analytic role, is still doing many of that on a day-to-day level. However, I think from my experience, generally creates a lot of repeated rework and also silo knowledge. So when you write something, you just put it in your local computer, write the SQL, generate a kind of a metric itself. It doesn't scale well also. In the past, we run into issue, especially back in, I think, the time at Coinbase, When Coinbase was like, I don't know, 800 people or less, generally that model works well because you're a point-to-point person with the PMs or marketing folks and try to answer that question really quickly. There's not much scalability in the data platform and engineering practice per se in that moment yet. But as the company suddenly started to balloon to 1,000, 2,000 people, the stuff you did in the past either get lost or in many ways it doesn't scale anymore. We have incidents that the data science will put a simple SQL into Airflow, hoping that it's create a simple table. But that table later on becomes the core table for all the downstream reporting without anyone else. And that becomes an issue that at some point, everything on the downstream continuously fail on an everyday basis. And we try to identify what the issues are and then find out actually that is the issue. And then we have to untangle the whole thing, build a proper SQL or proper Python code on the upstream and make sure that actually runs properly. So it creates a lot of tech debt later on. I think later we realize it actually makes a lot of sense for us to do this in a more scalable way, meaning as a data professional, we think about our deliverable more as a product, quote unquote. So any product, even if it's just a dashboard, requires design, requires some technical principle to be aligned, also requires some implementation. So if we can actually align that on a step-by-step approach, given time, it's not a huge pressure there. It creates more benefits in the longer term. Later on, we started to enforce this concept of tech design doc for anything that is beyond a 6-hour work for anyone. So if you want to throw something together, go with the design doc. It's required 2-3 days of your time. It helps you. It helps folks who try to understand what you're building later on, and also carry the knowledge to other functions or other areas of your organization. For that matter.
That's awesome, Justin. So I love from the same perspective, right? From the same lenses. Let's take a step back. Let's look at it holistically and let's answer the question so that it will not just answer your question for now, but also for some time later, for some years later, and you can go back and you have a solid ground from where it came from and everyone agreed and you look through all of those comments. That's wonderful. But how do you think of this trade-off between, I've been in teams where we are going down south, let's say, in our metrics, and we want to move fast. And if you want to understand, come up with the state of the union of the current product, then you wait 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get a deep dive understanding. And when it comes to situations where people are like waiting on you to come up with some insight to go solve that problem, how do you think it would work in those cases? Like, what have you done with your team?
This is a great question. I think in extreme cases, there's some project that initial timeline we set was 6 months.
Yes.
It's not, in my view, half joking, is not really acceptable to have any project at this current speed of iteration to have 6-month wins. The way to, generally we encourage team to do that is to set up mini milestones for anything that you want to achieve in the longer term. So think about a way that, you tell PMs that we're going to build this amazing thing 6 months down the road for you. Business might have changed 6 months down the road. Like, so whatever you build might not catching up the speed of what the product direction is going towards. So best thing is to have the continuous check-in and really set up, this in the first month or first week, this is what we want to ship. We want to actually ship a small piece of the insights along with the larger grand theme of the project to really get that feedback loop going, see where we're heading, if it's correct with the PM. Also give PM something. We're using PM as just a general stakeholder in this case. So give them something so that they can take away and understand and really bring value to it. In the engineering side of the practice, there's also similar main thoughts. There's agile development. You want something to quickly ship out, and every iteration, every sprint, you want something to be delivered so that you don't wait on for this long process for a kind of a very dreamy thing to deliver many years down the road. In many examples I've seen, that would never end well if you don't have this kind of a mini milestone be established. Another angle to this is that for data science, analytics, data engineering, our professional also needs to celebrate small wins, right? So we need to pat ourselves on the shoulder and say, hey, this is actually the the right direction we're moving towards. Without that feedback loop in a regular basis, you soon will go into a tunnel vision and looking down only on your spreadsheet or your dashboard without knowing what's going on outside. And then later on, when you deliver it, they're like, oh, this is not what I need. And you feel underappreciated in many ways.
That's cool.
Love the last point.
Yeah. I think you kind of mentioned this at the beginning where the implication is, hey, for a smaller company, sometimes this could be overkill, but certainly for growing bigger companies, you need this sort of scale and discipline. Where do you draw the line?
So I have some startup experiences, but it's kind of divided that experience into many phases. So when you are Series A and before, this is the time that what I consider is the product concept fit region, meaning that you have something pretty, I guess, embarrassing of an MVP that you have. You try to show the customers, maybe on a piece of paper or PowerPoint. In that phase, I'd say data is not as important. In many cases, is your product intuition, what you want to build actually matters. The second phase of that is PMF, right? So you want to try to find the product market fit phase. Some early signal data actually matters, but not at scale, but you just try to catch that early signal. So actually, this is something that our customer needs. Once you reach that PMF, the next phase will be scaling, right? So you want to scale that product through different channels, different marketing techniques, or even different ways of product-driven growth method. I'd say that at that moment is really when you should think about how do we actually make the solution scalable. Anything before that, I'd say, data is playing a critical role, but not something that will block the product development in many ways. When we try to scale, data insights become super critical, because when you grow from 100 to 10,000 customers, the result, the data-driven result actually matters for you to put the next resource into. And everything you build have an implication to the next phase of your product growth. So I'd say, in my view, that would be a good point for us to think about how do we build data solutions that is not super ad hoc and just one-off, but think about it a little more longer.
That's cool. I myself have been at companies where I generally don't, I don't have experience in like super small, like Series A or before or Series B companies. But I've been at companies where they were not that far away from it. Like, I guess being a scaler, the things that you kind of need to clean up in that transition is could be painful. It makes sense where it's kind of like the calling of the time, right? Like, just got to make sure you do whatever to make the business succeed.
And so in each organization, even if it's like larger size organization like Meta, Google, or even medium-sized company like Mercury, each product, we use product as a broader definition, each product are in their different life cycles. So using the startup examples, right? So Google search will be like a very mature product. Everything you release have this 1% increase will be like your seller wins there. So anything you build has to be very scalable, I assume. I never worked at Google. But, in a very kind of early phase product that you try to build within a large organization, those are startups, right? So you still try to prove that concept. You try to sell the idea to the leadership team, get resources. So that's where fast iteration of data matters more than a scalable solution. So thinking from that angle, then you hopefully can get a more clear view of where your data position stands in the organization in relationship with the product or business line you're attached to.
Yeah, I was exactly going to talk about that or ask you that question around, within a company as well, we see these differences. And I think it comes to a point, what you spoke about definitely is the most important thing, because if you're trying to sell something or start a new area, people need to believe in that, and there's data that's involved, and you need probably to be quick, and you can't take your iterations to get there. And also, like in mature products, like you said, it'll take, it's okay, we have some bandwidth to, go. But what do you think about growth versus core and research type of data science? I've heard you were a growth, data science person too. So I'm talking about this because I'm a growth data science manager and Wiz as well. So I think from my experience, growth data science need to be different slightly when compared to core data science and other areas, right? Because you're trying to look at every single hypothesis, trying to throw everything at the, at the wall and see what sticks, right? So I see growth needs to kind of always be in this slightly faster mode when compared to different orgs, but I'd love to know about your experience.
So I'd say absolutely align. There are a couple additional points on top of what you mentioned could be useful to think about. So at the early stage of your data science and data analytic career, we generally think these individual skill sets wise is a little more fungible, meaning that you can transition from a basic growth area, but still doing ad hoc and dashboarding, to a core product or to something else, right? So because the task itself is more following what the senior or staff data science is telling you to do and sort of training yourself against it. As you grow through that particular domain ladder, the skill sets become slightly different. So example at Coinbase, we have consumer, we have growth, we have institution, we have platform, which is more horizontal layer. These data scientists, as they grow through their own career ladder within the work or supporting work, they become, or the mentality and the speed of innovation become very different, right? So think about growth. It should be heavily experimentation driven. And in the experimentation phase, you want to launch fast and fail fast. You actually want to get that insights really quickly and then say, hey, that technique works, that technique didn't work. Let's just move on to the next thing. It's not about always try to find that magic thing. It's just you want to disapprove some of the concepts as quickly as possible. Versus, I think, in the platform side example of Coinbase, where I used to live, the platform side requires you to thinking through things from a more holistic angle, right? So you want to do this in slightly more longer term. You want to think about, is this a compliant risk being accommodated for? Do we have the right process so that we don't expose the company with crazy risks while we're doing this thing? So you can do that really fast, or at least not as fast as the growth. And move on to, let's say, an institution side. The B2B side of the business is, as long as you're dealing with the large established customers, they don't like changes. So your product lifecycle releases has to be as slow as possible, so you don't disrupt their workflow. I used to be part of the LinkedIn Talent Solution, right? So any crazy releases, you have to batch them and then release them directly to the customers. And you have to have sales team and customer success go in and talk about these changes. So there's a much longer process to do so. The data team's role clearly is going to be very different than growth and consumer focus role. That also goes to say, as you grow into a particular domain, you become that domain expert. So in a very ideal world, growth data science should be as agile, as creative as a growth product manager in many ways, because you know all the techniques, you also know data. So, those are very unique skill sets married together. You might as well be the lead for growth at some point, right?
Yeah, absolutely agree. So it's almost like within the orgs, each org kind of different, work like a, and then like a startup. Like growth kind of works like early to mid stage startup, even though if it's in a big org, versus core works like, matured and all of that. And within like companies, you also have these distinctions based on what type of a company you are.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Cool. I like that. I love where this is going, actually. And a good segue to that is the type of data scientist that you would be looking for. But before we get there, you had mentioned that the industry has been searching for unicorn data scientists, but that is not the right expectation. What do you mean by that?
Aren't we all? We all want someone to come in and just do all the jobs and be magically very good at analytic, know some kind of machine learning, can run experimentation, strong in engineering, and somehow also very good at communicating with the stakeholders and present really well. That's a unicorn person we're all looking forward to, right? So it's in any profession, especially in data science.
I thought they're available. I'm trying to hire for them.
I thought it's everybody.
Saying that, Justin.
They're everywhere. We're all
You're busting my myth. You're busting my myth right now.
So I think that, unicorn data science does exist. And I've worked with many very, very talented individuals. Again, this is not to discredit any of their work. And I really enjoy working with them. And if I move to any other organization, I tend to try to find these people first to say, hey, you want to join me? And again, just put that as the upfront. But in organization, specifically, the unicorn data scientists, as the organization grows, especially in the growth stage, soon they will run into some kind of bottlenecks. One, typically these individuals, because they're so capable, they start hoarding a lot of tasks. So if I have challenges and you can't find like a Justin to solve this problem, I'll just find Hai, right? So Hai can handle everything. But their bandwidth become the bottleneck first of all, right? So everything started landing in their stuff. They have to prioritize. Two, because they're so busy, unlikely they will have very clear documentation in many ways. So they have a lot of tribal knowledge or more siloed things in their mind going on. That creates additional risk for organization if they want to take a vacation or in many ways they want to leave for another job. That whole area will leave a big gap. And lastly, I think because sometimes we see that as organizations grow, their need has changed and data needs has changed. So these individuals, because they're past recognitions, they could be somewhat stubborn in adopting changes. They will be like, if my solution works, why do you want to improve it? What's the point of improving? Let's just keep maintaining the status quo. So there are challenges. Obviously, not all unicorn data science like this. The correct expectation should really be, first of all, knowing exactly our team as a data science, analytic, machine learning. What are the things we've built to help these individual tests? Anyone that is meeting our technical bars or culture fits can come in and be successful. Is that the onboarding process? Do we have the best in-class tool stack for them? Do we have the proper training? And how do we make sure they also are able to plug and play into this, as fast as they can? So this should be really the expectation of ourselves in relationship with the hiring. We are hiring for individuals that fits our skill sets, fit what we expected for organization perspective. Not necessarily always just like, we don't know anything. Everything's broken inside. Let's just find someone who can come in and fix everything. That usually that doesn't end well.
So a couple of follow-ups on this, and I would love to hear how you kind of design maybe like your hiring process as well. Probably in most interviews and hiring process that candidates would go through, it's pretty homogenous, right? If you're data scientist, if you're a machine learning engineer, you probably go through some sort of pipeline process where it's like, hey, the interviews are the same modules, same expectations. Did you pass all of them most of the time? Does that work in this world that you just talked about?
It does. I think the continue. Obviously, there's many ways to evaluate their talent through their journey with the organization. First and foremost is hiring. So, I mean, let's be honest. I think hiring is a pretty rigorous process in many organizations that we want to make it as comprehensive as possible. We design all kinds of technical round and culture fits and different case studies just so we select the right talent, right? So those are absolutely not necessary. And then for each of the organization, you design the aspect that you care the most, or in many ways that will likely have the indication they will be successful at the organization the most. So example being that, say, for example, Coinbase has a culture set, clear communications, very much things that we care about. And at data science, we care a lot about technical jobs. So that two aspects will reflect in your work in our interview process. We have a presentation that we actually score and grade very rigorously. As senior level you are, the more rigorous it gets. We also have 2 rounds of technical back then. That's just making sure that people are actually meeting the bar. When we say at staff level, they have to be very good at any kind of a skill sets we throw at them. But that's not the end of it. So we all know hiring only reflects part of your potential. The real deal comes in when you actually join an organization and start evaluating. So the evaluation is continuous. So I don't want to overburden the hiring process for that matter. Obviously, it's critical, but you want to be honest to your choices when they come in and start evaluating, are they the right people? Have they onboarded well, right? So do we have the support? Is it us that we don't have the tools and support needed for them to be successful? Or is it really on the individual themselves that just a bad fit? So again, my point being that I think this is just a process of a journey that you just have to treat it at individual pieces and look at them holistically.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Go ahead, Travia.
Yeah, I was going to basically ask, so who is this, let's say you have like 5 to 10 people you'd like to hire, you started a new company or you joined a new company. What do you look for, Justin, like when you try to hire for people? Let's say we are hiring for junior, mid, and senior because it's entirely a new team, because there's so many young folk that are trying to listen to this podcast and learn from, leaders like you on what is actually needed if I, need to get hired into a Silicon Valley tech company.
I'm no longer in the tech company, just so you know. But I think I'll share some general criteria. So obviously there's one piece is whether or not this individual will be a good culture fit for this organization. It's very unique to that organization. Again, back to the point of being very honest. Can this person be successful at Mercury, at Coinbase, and LinkedIn, right? So just based on how we as leaders interact and manage our team, that is important. I think this is more, I'd say, qualitative of aspect, right? For recommendation for the candidate is that, first of all, look at all the reviews and do the back channeling as you can. Understand if this company is something that you can be successful at, and try to kind of make the judgment from that angle. And two, during the interview, it's a two-way evaluation. You want to know, does my energy vibe well with the interviewers and all the people that I can work with? That's sort of an indication of culture fit for as well. So it's a double-way selection. A couple of things I personally look at. One is the engineering job. Again, back to the basic stuff that we all look at, the data system design, the Python skill sets, the SQL, in many ways. And we do, as you grow from a junior data scientist to senior staff, the question that we throw at you become harder and harder. If you think about from a career perspective or growth perspective, focus on your individual skill sets and the project you can deliver, and also the technical chops. Ultimately, that matters the most, right? So as you see in the tech industry, in the past couple of years, people start valuing IC skill sets a lot more than before now.
Yes.
So, half jokingly, a lot of managers feel a little bit challenged and stretched because they're converting back to ICs. All of us, right? I'm talking about this. But you guys probably are great ICs compared to me. But that technical job is something will carry you for a long way.
Yes.
There is a minimum level of skill sets needed for you to be successful at a management level. A lot of the people tend to say, I'm going to work for 5 years, become a senior data scientist, and then convert to a manager, which lead team from that onwards. Then you soon run into some kind of ceilings in your skill sets. How do you continue to equip yourself with that in ladder? It's important. So I'd say that's, of all things, that's one thing I think it's going to be pretty universal for everyone.
Yeah, love that you covered from hiring to actually, growing in your career. To some extent, they're a little similar from the point of view that to see value in you as a person when they try to hire you, and what matters when they try to grow you in your career. It's the same. Like we value few things like technical chops and, all the things that you mentioned. And so there is a similarity in things, and probably this level keeps increasing as you grow in your career, right? What's expectation of you keeps increasing as you grow in the career. Yeah.
Exactly.
Justin, do you specifically, for example, like, do you hire for specializations?
I do. So obviously, if you're talking more role differences, I'm currently at Mercury leads both data science and data engineering and analytic engineering. So those are both specializations. At Coinbase, obviously, when we have an overarching data science team, that was what I call an umbrella term for everything. When I started in 2019, we didn't have a data engineering role. We didn't have a kind of applied research role. So I created a few additional roles under the name of data science. And there's data science, obviously, a little. There are folks that have been more machine learning-ish. There are data scientists that are more analytic-ish. So we gradually made it a little bit more clear and crisp on exactly what we expect these individuals to do. So one role that back then we created, and I personally is still very much interested in that domain, is how do we bring the Wall Street quant finance type of work into crypto world? And because crypto is part of trading and strategy. So we created a role called applied research. We hired a lot of very strong background of Wall Street quant into the role. They're part of data science team. They're also doing a lot of more deep dive into crypto, token dynamic, trading dynamic type of work and public research. So they're more research-oriented type of people versus the analytic have their own requirements. So you got to be agile, understand the business concept of more, can forming a kind of a business question really quickly, finding a solution, and be also jack of all trades in many tool sets you have.
Love that. I think one piece of advice here that I want to extract based on your answer for the audience is everybody is going to be different, even though everybody clears a very similar interview process, or like the baseline level of capability is assessed to be like certain thresholds that you need to meet. But everybody should be able to bring something of their own to the business, to the company. And, Justin, to your point, hey, you were looking for quants and they still have to pass these interviews and stuff. So if you're really interested, for example, trading, crypto, or like that sort of things, then you have an advantage in that space. And so one thing that I kind of started hearing is like, just like a broad stroke advice, here's how you become, a data scientist or become X, like any sort of X. And then the advice is always like very homogenous. But in fact, if you have a special strength and you're able to take that and demonstrate that, there's a place for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was going to talk about the same thing too. High is that, let's say you're like rated on like 4 or 5 skills, right? Could be tech. In tech, you have SQL, Python, like how good at you are in data design. Depending on the role, it's a data scientist versus data engineer. Then all of these kind of keep differing in their scale. Let's say if you're hiring for a data science analytics, a mid-level, you probably have to be 8 on 10 or maybe 7 on 10, right? Depending on the level. Then let's say you have 7 on 10 on all of these, which is needed, but you have a 9 on 10 on something. So that's when you're going to pop up and like, this is the candidate that, we'd like to hire, especially if that 9 on 10 matches with the type of hire you want to do, right? Let's say I'm hiring for a growth data science. Then if the 9 on 10 comes at experimentation, statistics, or some sort of, being fast or agile, I'm going to hire that person versus a probably 8s on 10 homogeneously on everything. They probably might have been not that great as another person in some tech, but if they pass my bar and they show up with their like superpower in one area that I'm trying to hire, I probably will get that person because they have a higher chance of impact and success rate in the role. Do you agree with this, Justin? How do you think about this?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree. And I think the way to think about it is also, it's an interesting graph if you think about your career trajectory. So everyone start off, let's say data science analytics, everyone start off with someone that knows absolutely nothing, right? So there's not much differentiation in that layer. So all the junior analysts joining a company, try to learn SQL, learn Python, learn the data sets. As you continue to grow, the recommendation is you want to be a little bit more intentional where you want your skill sets to land out and be really focused on that area. So that could relate it to your education background, your work environment, the type of project you're getting involved to, right? So all of that, and then you mentor, you managers, all that matters to help you shape to the direction. And then your career start branch out a little bit different. Right? Me and Hai, even though we all start at the same time, I could be an analytics specialist and Hai will become machine learning engineer at some point. And then you see a vastly different type of roles exist in the data world or outside of data world in software engineering as well. As you continue to grow upwards, right? So if you want to grow from a director and above, eventually you want to reach to a VP of data, the breadth of your knowledge starts suddenly become even more important. Meaning that even if I start off with a machine learning engineer, if I want to continue to be a leader of some sorts, I need to understand analytics. I need to understand statistics even more. I need to understand experimentation. So Once you reach that level, when you are very confident about your, 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 skill sets, you want to branch out. You want to actually learn more things and start connecting the dots. The value comes when you can bring these knowledge kind of a course of knowledge into one piece and really kind of make sense of that in the business context. Then you become even more valuable for any organization. And eventually, if anyone is kind of lucky enough, will become the leadership and executive leadership. Then you have to run everything. Everything's responsibility. There's no excuse for you at that moment.
Like, absolutely love that, Justin. So this reminds me of something. When you try to move companies or when you try to move within a role, within a company to another role, you look out for things like when people try to move into companies, they look out for compensation. It's like the first thing that pops up. But one other thing, especially younger folk needs to look out for is learning, right? How much is, like, probably you're already creative. Maybe you come from that area and you're great at communication, right? Then don't still rely on that as your, thing to get into a company. You can, but try to get into a company where there's probably more expected of you in another area, right? Which will help you learn that area and add another feather to your hat. And the more you keep jumping between different roles within a company or outside a company, try to add more feathers to your hat rather than hang on to one and keep moving, because you'll hit a maturity at some point. There'll be less to move on to, sort of a thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So irrespective of like comp, if you probably, if such market's bad, you probably are not going to get a huge improvement in comp if you move. But if you see a good chunk of significant improvement in this, adding another feather to your set of skill set, then, there's a good, good reason for you to move.
Yeah. And maybe related to comp is a very good topic. I'd say early stage of your career, don't try to optimize too much of your compensation. Optimize your learning and what you can get exposed to, the environment you'll be in. If you can join a rocket ship, take a compensation cut isn't a bad thing at all. It's only at a certain age of your career, a certain age of your life, you want to optimize that a little bit. At the early stage, I'd say, really focus on how can you invest yourself now so that in the future, it will be a lot more valuable, and then you hopefully be in a position that's happier.
Yeah. Also probably applies to like career switchers as well. Hey, if I was a surgeon and I want to join the data field, probably you have to make some tough choices, but that's no different than your exact advice for more junior people. So this is really interesting. So if you look ahead to today in terms of where we are in the whole AI revolution, we've talked quite a bit about AI in the last few episodes.
We can't end the podcast without it, Justin.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta rank on the YouTube algorithm. How do you see AI shaping the role of data scientists or just like data functions in general?
I have a lot of opinions. I'm going to share a few. So first and foremost, I think, as you already see, there's a lot of good AI agent has been already developed. The ad hoc reactive type of analytic work will gradually be replaced. So this is sort of an interesting area because in my view, in many cases, and I think all of us probably have this experience, that reactive, when you interact with the stakeholders, when they have a question, they will type kind of a Slack message to you, hey, hi, I want to know this number. Justin, I want to do this. Ishra, yeah, I want to do this. And then that response sort of built trust, right? So we, at early stage at least, we kind of rely on some kind of that interaction to start building trust with stakeholders. However, as in the AI world, as we create better data models and create a lot more powerful text-to-SQL models, that's gradually start going away. Then we need to start finding out how do we build proper trust with the stakeholders in that regards.
Yes.
But think from that angle, at least in the first foremost, that will be gone. Second, I'd say in the data world as a whole, the data engineering, analytic engineering, construct a proper semantic layer, having a very cleanly defined metadata for your metrics and data mart and all the upstream become even more important. Because LLM is language-based. You want the LLM marry that with the data language itself. The data language is the data modeling work we are all trying to do at some point. So let's say the data engineering aspect becomes super important if you want to use data to power some of the AI application by itself. And third, and everyone probably mentioned this, that the data science will start leveraging a lot more of those AI tools to hopefully to empower themselves to be more, to do more with less, right? So I think that's the concept. One small example is, I think back in 2023, we at Coinbase, me and a few of our data engineers, we run into this kind of a general issues that we are the business demand on data analytic insights and all the kind of a partnership didn't stop, and they'll continue to grow. But market was not that great, so we didn't get much headcount to hire. Actually, as a matter of fact, I got no headcount to hire, so I can't grow my team. And that happened to be the time that GPT 3.5 released. And now we have this idea and say, hey, why don't we give it a shot? Let's build something. So and we have our very strong kind of a junior data engineer, Sid, who were able to actually crank something through, build a prototype based on Slack, and it worked really well. And it's got a lot of good traction. So, and gradually we built that, becoming what I consider the data copilot for data scientists, that they can answer basic questions based on our metric semantics, on metrics, creating charts. It served as a knowledge base that essentially you can ask, oh, how do we define certain metrics? And it'll pop up the definition for you. It also served as a workflow optimization. You can tell the Slack bot to say, I want to backfill my table to this date. It will actually kick off an Airflow job. So become very powerful in that smaller kind of a domain. So which means that I think at some point, if we can scale that, it'll become even more powerful. More of our work will be replaced.
Yeah.
So a spicy,
go ahead.
you can, I was going to say, a spicy take here, Justin, is you did replace a data scientist's job now with your bot. So that's what that's.
So you guys have probably heard it from when the DeepSeek released in Perplexity, it was said the same thing. Necessity is the mother of invention. In many ways, when you have unlimited resource to hire, to recruit, right, to build your data team, I guess the motivation for you to build an AI agent to replace part of that work is very low. Because, if you're a PM, if you're marketing people, I can just Slack someone to help with that answer. One, it's simple. They can just do it themselves. I don't need to think about what question I asked. They probably have a better answer for me. Two, anything goes wrong, there's a person that I can share responsibility with, right? Versus if it's a Slack bot, if I type everything, if I prompt and my prompt is not right and I get the wrong answer, it's all on me. So there's not an environment if you have unlimited resources. However, back to my example, that we don't have that luxury anymore. There's a necessity. We need to actually continue to grow that. That becomes sort of a point for us to push that innovation. You see that gradually becoming where some tech company already have shown some early signals of, can we limit the headcount so we can then push for some AI adoption from the angle? It's unavoidable. It's not me replacing the job. It's the trend itself. I do want to make a separate point, I think, just so that I don't sound like an evil person. I think for each organization, as leaders, as responsible corporation, we all carry responsibility to take care of people around us, not just our customers, but also our employees. Think about ways, how do we empower an employee for their transformation, for the tool they can use to do their job better, is a critical piece. If you can't take care of your employees, my view is that it's very hard for us to trust you can also take care of your customers. So those all go in hand together. So we can't always just say we replace our employee with AIs. That is not the approach. Instead, we should think about how do we empower our team so they can be more powerful with the tools they can use. That includes data or non-data stuff.
Yeah. So for the data scientist, in terms of in the whole new AI, well, I guess the current AI world, what sort of skills and mindsets should they adopt in order to set themselves up for success?
I only had general recommendations. I think that each company is probably different in many ways. Just be first open-minded and then start embracing the change in many ways and give it a try, right? So, and there's not just, and then I think one of the Stanford professor, Christopher Pott, was say something about AI revolution is not just about models, right? The LM models get all the kind of the fancy reputations, but the AI system itself is actually the one who's doing the work. So when you think about AI, adopting AI, think about what are the compounding system you want to design, and then try to play a role and try to kind of poke around a little bit. Even if you're a data engineer, there's new data platform or data warehouse technology can power AI agent a lot more efficient than before now. So try that. If you're a machine learning engineer, then think about how do you host a LLM in your local machine to give it a try. As you play around yourself, and then you get more inspiration on how do you apply that to day to day and bring value to your team, your company. And that's one small advice, but obviously each company has different situations for their conjunction.
You know what, Justin? That advice has been so consistent across everybody that we interviewed. So love that you reinforce that. Honestly, it's so intuitive. But when we Shravya, when we interviewed Yuzheng a couple of episodes ago, when we asked him point blank, "Hey, you've been at cutting edge companies. Have you seen people using AI enough, like as data scientists?" And the answer was like a flat out no. Meaning people are just too busy, right? Just like picking up any sort of skills, what you alluded to earlier. If you don't have that push or the necessity for it, it's really hard to kind of break out of what you've been doing that works fine to embrace something that's different. So I love how you talked about, hey, just be open. That's the first, like that's the first start.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think there's so many open source stuff you can try. I built a PC mostly to play games. And I told my wife I'm trying to do something else, but I actually mostly play video games. Black Myth Wukong, I don't know if you guys play it. But so what I did is I have a slightly fancier GPU. There's open source Olama can host a lot of different open source AI models. There's open web UI you can connect on top of it. So I was able to establish a local kind of IP-based AI server that I can just ask questions directly to myself without leaking my data to a third party. Simple stuff. And then I'm not strong in coding compared to many of you guys. So this is something you can just absolutely do with your Mac computer or with your Windows computer at home. Just give it a try and see how that works. And then you can just build on top of it.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it, right, in the meeting, in the podcast with Yuzheng, is that this is like an arbitrage. If we probably don't get onto the train now, in few months or in a year from now, it'll be too much for you to catch up, or there might be this, friction that, oh my God, I don't know this, or there's so much to learn, or I don't quite understand what exactly this means, sort of a thing. So this is a great time for us to jump on the train and try to use something and get to use some parts of AI and understand it.
And so anecdotally, my wife is non-tech. I think she used ChatGPT a lot more and a lot better than I am. Because I think as a tech work, I'm like, I can just ask a simple question to give me everything. She said, no, you got to actually prompt this ChatGPT with this proper question. And this is how you actually get the proper things or iterations. And I was like, oh, wow, she has nothing to do with tech, and she's now using AI tools a lot better than I am, which I'm both scared and amazed.
That is so cool. Hey, Justin, we got a couple minutes left. I want to talk about one thing as well that I think would be fascinating for the audience. So impact and the drive for that. So you're one of the people that's big advocate for getting a seat at the table. How do you actually do that, and what does that mean? Like, just to define it for people who are not familiar.
So having a seat on the table, meaning that the stakeholder generally treat you as partners rather than support. This is more me being lazy. When I manage my team, I generally want to remove all the supporting work from my, team charter. We are partners. Let's not think about support. When you talk about support, obviously I'm not putting down any support teams work. But when you sometimes say we support one team, meaning that team is leading, I am in the back seat and sort of giving them stuff. As opposed, I think in the data professional side, we should always think about how do we drive this. We are part of this driver group, right? So when we talk about in the tech world, like product engineering, data design, these are the 4 critical roles in any aspect that can actually make decision and make product decision forward. What are the unique things as a data you can drive towards? It matters in ways that what are you delivering, how you're delivering it, and how can you deliver at scale or as a solution. So each aspect you have to think about, if a stakeholder asks you a question, you can't just say, oh, you want a metrics? Let me give you a metric. Let me actually put in a chart. You can look at this metric. Look how nice my dashboard is. What does it really mean, right? So, and then the stakeholder has to look at this and say, oh, let me use my brain to interpret this up and down. What does it mean? The better way of delivering is to really think ahead. Look at this to say, this is what the result is based on the business goals of what the product is. We think this can reduce costs that way, improve revenue, or drive user experience, and really kind of prompt that in the direction that is more proactive. The second part is how you're delivering it. I think in many ways, back to the point that sometimes we just ship a massive spreadsheet to someone and ask them to do the hard work. But communication is more than 0.5% of the work. And then you guys probably have the same experience. Delivering the right message, ship it in front of the key stakeholders and, in a crisp, concise way is a skill set you need to practice, intentionally practice. And, lastly, just think about this always back to the point that we already discussed earlier. Think about how we build this at a scale. If I can solve this problem, can my teammate use my solutions to copy paste, do the same thing? How can I solve this for more people, right? If I can run experimentation just with my manual process, is there a way for us to design a platform or include a vendor to do this? So these are things as a partner, you want to think ahead. You want to bring something to the table that uniquely you can, no one else can, in this kind of a scheme of things or different type of roles.
Yeah, I keep telling to my data scientists that if imagine they are like in a notifications pod or an upgrades pod, I'm like, you are head of upgrades. What do you think the upgrades team should be doing? I feel like data science keep forgetting how much power they have. Do they have data with them? And imagine that combined with the product owner or this mentality, there's literally no one that could do your work. Like you could be the person that literally stands in the front and tell them, go here, go here, go here. And all they do is drive there and keep winning, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just that mentality of being the owner and getting to that place. And I think that'll be the best place to be and be a partner than a support system, like you said. Yeah.
That is awesome. Hey, we're up on time. Thank you so much, Justin, for spending the time with us. I'm pretty sure our audience has learned a ton from this conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. Yeah. Thank you both. Really enjoyed this discussion as a whole.
It was great having you, Justin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for our viewers and listeners across platforms, please like, comment, or subscribe. And subscribe. Surprisingly, those actions do help with the YouTube algorithm. So please help us out. And we'll bring you more content like this in the future. Thank you, everybody.